Hello and welcome everyone to the Entrepreneurial Talk Show. I am honored to have Jamil here with me today. It's been a true blessing for so many reasons. If you guys have never had an amazing hug, this gentleman right here knows how to give a powerful hug. And the reason why I say that is, like when me and him met a couple of months ago, it was an elemental experience, fire and ice going together, and it was like a blend. And it's something you have to experience to understand. Welcome. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing so well, Bina. Thank you for having me. From the first time we met to our previous Zoom conversation, there's just a energetic vibe that you have that just you magnetized me. I was like, that woman's amazing, and I want to get to know her. And for our listeners, thank you for taking the time to be here with us. Excited to see what magic is going to unfold.
A lot of people know when they're listening to this particular show that it really comes from a place of energy. A lot of my questions are not pre-recorded, not pre-given questions, and it really shows the magic of just true power of connection. But before we dive into anything, please tell us a little bit about yourself. What is it that you do, and how do you best support the world right now?
Sure. Thank you. So at the end of the day, I really love people. I love seeing
Mm.
people lit up. I love seeing people in love with themselves and their lives. And I love seeing people doing the work that they came here to do, the thing that fulfills them most. And over the last 20 years, I've been very curious about what stops people from doing that. What are the blocks that get in the way? It could be stuck emotions, beliefs they have about themselves, mental work, or energetic things. And I've spent the 20 years just gathering up, let's say, that toolkit of how can I just help as many people as possible when I'm with them. That journey took me through medical school into the world of NLP, neurolinguistic programming, energy work, whether it was Reiki healing, Ho'omana, which is a form of Hawaiian energy work,
Mm.
hypnotherapy, and bringing it all together, connecting with a human being, whether in person or over Zoom. And it's like, how can I help you remember who you really are and be who you really are? And not be who I think you should be. Are you being the you that you think you should be being? Are you proud of the
Mm.
way you're living your life? Are you proud of the partner, the parent, the friend, the leader that you're being? Maybe the answer is yes, you could do better, or maybe the answer is no. And I hope it could be better. At that point, that's the big picture work that I've loved to do. Free people from it's funny, I just thought about this Jim Carrey commencement speech that I shared with my mastermind group. And he talks about how I realized my job was to free people from concern because in his comedy
Mm.
work. And in a similar way, it's my job to free people from the story of limitation they've been living into and make it conscious. So once they're aware it's there and they're aware there's another option, support them in creating that, making that happen. Once that's happened, it's beautiful to see how they show up. It's like the caterpillar to butterfly kind of metaphor. And then they take off and they fly.
That's amazing. I think it's going to be easy for somebody to understand what you really do because you're super powerful. I think some people might be on the teeter line of, okay, this is interesting, but how? How does this work? Is there something you want to do? Do you want to try something on me right now to
Mm,
show the viewers that
mm,
people have to experience
yeah.
you? So would you
Yeah.
be open to doing something now?
I definitely will be. And depending on what it is and how deep seated it is, that will depend on what the result is. So I'm open to it. Let's see what absolutely. So what's going on?
We're talking about TEDx. Nerves. Nerves are kicking in for me being on stage.
Hmm. What does being on stage represent to you?
Hmm. Me being on stage represents to me freedom, power of speaking,
Hmm.
hearing my voice or the power of my voice.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for you?
That's a good thing for me because I was silenced for many years. And I think
Hmm.
now it's just that opening of, I'm on
Yeah.
one of the biggest stages and
Yeah.
I'm about to tell a story
And so if you were to play with me in this example, if I'm really being honest with myself, I'm nervous because,
of being seen,
and if
my
I'm
children being
seen,
seen.
yeah,
Hmm.
and if I'm seen, what might happen? What might people see?
Reality,
And the reality is,
the struggles that people feel,
and when they see that, what might they conclude about you?
that life is a lot harder than what people say, what they visually see.
Hmm. What could be possible for them if they recognize that? If they know that, what opens up for them? When you share that in you, what can that bring out of them?
More empathy towards people, more empathy towards the families like I have.
Hmm. And why will that be positive for them?
The possibilities of awareness. They're not closed minded. It's for them to understand there is other worlds out there living in the same dimensions.
Yeah. And please finish this sentence for me. I feel a bit nervous about giving this talk, and that's
Amazing because I have the power of a voice that I'm unleashing.
and as you step into that power, as you unleash that What does that allow the people who are listening to you to give themselves permission to do?
Talk about or see things in a different light.
Hmm. May I share something that I see?
Absolutely.
When I experience you, Bina, I experience you as the full embodiment of authentic expression. And you telling me you're feeling nervous is first beautiful because it's an authentic expression. And your nervousness is about what if they catch me being authentic? Now, would that be that bad of a thing?
No, not at all.
How does it feel right now compared to when we started talking about it? When you think about this TED Talk?
It's calmer and just ready to show the world who I truly am on stage and my
Yeah,
personality.
yeah. It's so interesting. I found that we wear a mask, and the mask says, who do I need to be loved or accepted or validated or seen or special or popular or whatever? And that mask is the pretending. It's the persona, which is a Latin word for actor's mask. And so we wear the mask and we're saying, this is the front I'm putting out there because this is who I think you want me to be. And the challenge with that is we show up to an event like this, a talk like this, and rather than focusing on being ourselves, we're focusing on getting it right. But by whose
Yeah,
standard and according to whom? And what if you couldn't
yeah,
get it wrong if you just showed up as you?
yeah. And I'm happy you said that. First of all, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I feel that from you.
Yeah.
When coaches and people in general talk about unmasking and wearing a mask, it's who do you need to be in order to be that salesperson or to get this deal. One of the things that like I coach around is be yourself. The more
Mm.
yourself you are, you don't need to be a Jim Carrey to be funny. You don't need to pretend to be funny because then it's just not going to
Yeah.
really be you. Everybody has a little humor inside them, but they just don't trust it. They don't trust it. They're just like, oh, I'm not a comedian, so I'm
Yeah.
not going to do
And
that.
hmm, may I take you through a short process that I think would be useful for you
Sure,
and for our listeners as well,
sure,
because they can try this on
absolutely.
themselves. I'm going to tailor this to you, and then after I'll share it so the listeners can apply it to themselves as well. And so if you were to just give me, let's say, the top two or three things that might make you nervous.
Two things that could happen that makes me nervous. One is forgetting my speech. The other thing that could happen is I'm fully dyslexic. So I think the other thing that scares me is I say things backwards. Like it
Mm,
might come out in a not in a wrong order.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
that will throw me off. Like I might understand what's happening, but
yeah,
other people might be like, where's this going?
yeah. Got it. Thank you. So when
Mm-hmm.
you're ready, just allow your eyes to close. And let's just begin by taking three nice breaths in and out, in for about 3 seconds through the nose, out for about six through the mouth. And once you've done that, just continue to breathe in a relaxed way. What I'd like you to do is imagine that you are floating above your home. Wherever you are right now, you're floating above the building. And as you imagine yourself floating above, visualize as if you're in this infinite field. So you look in every direction and you just see the field. Now we're going to create what's called a timeline. For some people, when I ask them, where is the future? They might say it's in front of them. It could be to the right, to the left, any direction is fine. For you, where is the future? In front of you. Perfect. And for other people, when I ask, where's the past? It could be behind them, it could be left, right, different direction. So I'd like you to just ask your unconscious mind to support you in this process. And whether you are able to visualize this or maybe you're not, it's fine either way. It's just trusting the process. Ask your unconscious mind to take your timeline and create it as a straight line and imagine it in the field. And it can look however you want it to look. I've had clients make it look like train tracks. I've had clients make it look like this electric blue light. It can look however you want it to look, but it goes all the way to the horizon in each direction, to the past and to the future. And there's an area that you notice that's right in front of you, and that area represents the present moment. It represents now. And what I'd like you to do is gently float over where you're right above the present moment. Now turn to face the future. And I want you to float into the future 15 minutes after the successful completion of your TEDx talk. And I want you to float into the timeline, right into that memory, that future memory. And I want you to imagine the standing ovation that you've just received. Maybe there's tears coming down your eyes because regardless of how you thought it was supposed to go, you did it. And people start approaching you one by one, telling you about the impact that your talk had on them. One of the things that stood out to them was that it didn't need to be perfect. It was perfect just by you showing up as you. And somebody even walked up to you and told you that their dream is to give a TEDx talk, but they thought they had to be perfect. And then maybe there was a point where you forgot something or that you stumbled and you just kept going and you didn't let it stop you. And they thought that was so inspiring because here's this person representing to them what's possible. And they thought, wow, I was holding myself back thinking I had to be perfect. But Bina just demonstrated to me that I can just be myself. And what if that was perfect? And person after person would approach you, letting you know how impactful what you shared was. And you might even laugh internally, knowing maybe you went off script for half of it. And then you sat there and realized I was so worried about this. And I prepared, I did whatever needed to be done. And I'm here and it's complete. And all these new opportunities are showing up now. And I'm so proud of myself. And just take a moment, feel that, breathe that in. The feeling of being proud of yourself, the feeling of being grateful for being given the opportunity, being proud of yourself for the work that you put in to prepare for it. Allow yourself to be reminded of a Bruce Lee quote where he said, if you want to learn the guitar, learn all the chords, finger positions, scales, and then once you got all that, just forget it all and just play. And as you breathe in this moment, allow yourself to float up out of that future moment. As you look at the timeline between the present moment and that future moment, allow all of the memories, all of the moments between then and now to reorganize themselves to support the successful completion of that experience. See it all unfolding. And when it's complete, float back to the present moment. When you float back into the present moment, rest down into your body and allow yourself to be grounded in a feeling of trust in the process, trust in yourself, knowing that you have survived everything you've ever experienced up until this moment. 100% track record that you've always figured it out. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And anything that you're currently experiencing, there will be a moment in the future you will have figured it out. You literally have a 100% track record, and this will be no different. You have everything you need within you, and everything up until this point in your life has been preparing you for this moment. It wouldn't show up now if you weren't ready for it. Just breathing that in, letting that in, knowing that you're going to do whatever work needs to be done to prepare. When you arrive, you're ready. And let's just complete with 4 nice breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. And as you take your final breath, I want the eyes to remain closed and then just continue to breathe normally. And I'd like you to just speak out loud. What are you feeling or noticing in your body right now?
More calm and more grounded and more centered.
When you think about that TEDx talk, how do you feel?
Excited.
Wonderful. And when you're ready, you can come back into the room and open your eyes. For our listeners, anxiety is a story that you tell yourself about a future event that has not happened, about why it's not going to go well. And so nothing is more powerful than a thought believed. And so when if you don't believe it, it's just a thought. If you don't believe it, it's just one of an infinite amount of thoughts that move through your head in any given moment. But if you don't believe it, it's got no power. And so when you recognize I'm scaring myself, it's beautiful. You're scaring yourself because you care. You're scaring yourself because you want to do well. You're scaring yourself because you're going to have an audience and you want to make sure you do right by them. Beautiful. Just like this podcast is completely unscripted. I get that people prepare a lot for these kind of talks, and you've been preparing your whole life for it.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, because I do a lot of NLP timeline therapy to my clients. And it's been a while since it's been done to me, and I didn't even know that was going to be gifted to me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate this, because when you do it to so many people in your practice, yes, you can do this to yourself. A lot of times, a lot of people are like, oh, can you do this on yourself? Yes, you can. But I didn't know I needed that until I needed it. So thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with you. Notice that Bina just received that because she asked for it. For our listeners, where could you ask for some support right now? Where could you ask somebody in your world for something that you feel like you need or that you're wanting? Maybe you've been unwilling to ask, or you've been afraid to ask, or you didn't even think to ask. Now you can recognize that when you ask, you open up the possibility that you receive.
And sometimes if you don't know what to ask, that's okay too. That's why I don't give people scripts to come on the show. I don't want them to practice. I want the raw, the ugly, the dirty, whatever shows up. I had somebody cry. I had tears come out of my eyes one time. That's the beauty behind everybody's story and journey. I didn't know I needed that. Everyone who does NLP will realize that you become severely thirsty right after. But that's also because your mind has just done this amazing work in a very short period of time. So anytime you do that, please drink lots of water and allow your body to rest if your body needs to rest afterwards. Just so that when people are hearing this and they want to try this on themselves, please do, but just make sure water and rest as needed. And you took me off my game, man. In a good
Mm.
way. First of all, I just want to say thank you and I appreciate that. And this is the type of stuff that you do with your clients, correct? This type of work.
To a
And
certain degree.
yeah.
A lot of the last several years, it's been what we started with was very interesting. So it started with just understanding what's going on, asking questions, circling the drain on what's really
Yep.
there, and then just talking it out and realizing, is it whatever I'm nervous about, afraid about, is that even true? Is it, I make a
Mm-hmm.
distinction with my clients between rational fear and irrational fear. Rational fear keeps you alive. Irrational fear prevents you from living.
Mm.
Jumping out of a plane without a parachute, assuming you want to survive, is a rational fear. But giving a talk or asking someone out on a date, that's not a rational fear. Your life is not on the line. We scare ourselves. And then let's say it's irrational, which most of the fears that we experience are. Fear is not bad. Fear can be your innate wisdom coming through. And so for our
Yeah.
listeners, check in. Is it rational or irrational? If it's rational, that's wisdom. Listen to that. It's keeping you safe.
Yeah.
But if it's irrational, then you play with the level of, is it possible or probable? Now, if I told you right now, Bina, I haven't left this room, I haven't gone outside in a year. And then you said to me, "Oh my God, why?" And I say, "I'm just afraid." And you might say, "Well, what are you afraid of?" What happens if I walk outside and a meteor that's coming down from the heavens, it shrinks and just hits me right in the forehead and I die? Now, is that possible? Yes. But
Yeah, it can be.
how many zeros after the decimal place to the right? And it's that is such a small percentage. The probability is practically zero, but I'm going to let that stop me. Yeah, but is it probable? Almost usually no. And then even if it was probable, there's things you could do to mitigate that and to better prepare. So I love the idea of fear being false evidence appearing real when it's
Mm.
irrational. When we can play in that arena, there's that level of work, and then there's an energy work component. That's the work I've just fallen in love with the last 4 years. We didn't do that to a certain degree, but that is a different component of the work. Yeah.
Where did you learn this energy work? What type of training did you do? You are a real doctor. I want everyone to understand. You
Yeah.
went to medical school and you
Mhm.
passed your medical boards,
Yeah.
and you are a true physician.
Yeah.
You're able to prescribe meds. You're able to have a practice. So you're able to do all the functionality of a real primary care doctor. I want people to understand that. But what you're doing that's so different that I love is like this NLP part, the energy part, the Chinese medicine, the acupuncture. Like you're able to integrate all of that into one multi-complex
Yeah.
package,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That aspect of my story, I did this work for years intuitively, like not necessarily knowing what I was doing. And I was making it up as I went along, and it just seemed to be very effective with people. People were recovering from chronic pain they had for decades or an autoimmune disease they had for decades. And we were getting over it in 45 minutes, and then it was just gone. You ever seen the movie Inception by any chance? Leo DiCaprio and all those guys. Before that movie came out, I had my own version of that process. And when I saw that movie, I was like, oh, that's what I do. Taking people within a dream, resolving the problem, and then bringing them back out. When I was in my third year of medical school working with patients, I realized the patients getting the best results are not the people that I'm giving the drug or the supplement or the lifestyle recommendation, whatever it might be. Those are helpful and those can be life changing depending on the circumstance. But my mindset was they've already got those things from other people and it's not working.
Right,
And
right.
so I took off the doctor hat and put the coach hat on. The mindset was, what is being missed here? What's at the root? And it was very often things that happened, significant emotional events throughout their
Mm-hmm.
life, if not early on in their life. When I was in my fifth year in Arizona, I had just graduated my medical school program and I was studying for my boards. And I got a job in Arizona at this medical clinic. And I told the guy, this is what I do. I shared with him the work I was doing that was not medical related, but it was healing related and helping people. And I said, I'm going to take my board exam. I'll get my license in a few months. But can I start the work now with what I do and then bring in the medical part later when that time comes? He tells me he was a very wealthy businessman in Canada and got pretty aggressive cancer years ago. He didn't want to go the
Right.
conventional route with chemo, radiation, and surgery. Sometimes that stuff can be life-saving and great, but he didn't want that. And so he decided he was going to do more of a holistic approach. And so first he saw some naturopathic doctors in Canada. Naturopathic medicine, which is a form of medicine that I practice, is think of it like you have conventional medicine and then you have holistic medicine and then you integrate them together. And so you get this best of both approach. And so the doctors in Canada told him, our scope of practice is limited here. You should go to Arizona because they'll be able to treat you the way that you need to be treated. And it's
Mm.
unfortunate with legalities, it changes depending
Right.
on where you are. And so he gets this RV and he drives down and he comes to Arizona. But while he's there doing all these natural therapies, he becomes a Reiki master. He goes through that whole process. He was there for years using Reiki. Then he met with a shaman. And the shaman took him through this process of releasing this emotional trauma that he had as a child from his father. And by doing all of that, he cured his cancer. Because what the shaman did was very similar to what I do, I shared that story and he's, oh, we got to offer our patients this. So he goes, you're hired. He shakes my hand and he felt something. He said, oh, you'd be really good at Reiki. At the time, growing up in more of a conventionally minded medicine mindset, I didn't know how to take that. I didn't know really anything about energy. So it was like a compliment that I received, but I didn't know how to receive it. So it was a little bit awkward. Thanks. I didn't know what that meant. Fast forward um, 2 years. This was back in 2019. So like 2021, 2022. We're in the middle of COVID or so. And this intuition kicks in, 2021, I think. This COVID, not COVID, this intuition kicks in and it says it's time to do energy work. I reached out to this gentleman in Canada thinking he was still in Arizona. He told me, hey, because of the COVID restrictions, I can't come back to
Right.
Arizona for a while. He said, I'm a little bit out of practice and I don't typically work with people in this way anymore. I'm going to connect you with somebody I know in Arizona, far more, powerful than I am as a practitioner, and she'll help you. So he connects me with this woman and she became my Reiki teacher. I flew over, trained with her, and I returned several times. I got so much from those experiences. One thing I want to share that's so relevant to any skill anyone is wanting to develop. I get there, go through the experience, and it's called an attunement process. The attunement is getting your body receptive to the energy and then allowing you to be able to direct it. And so she does the process, and the before and the after, can you feel anything now? A large percentage of people feel things on the back end. And I had the energetic sensory acuity of a brick, and so I couldn't feel anything. I just remember finishing the process and going, no, I don't know. I'm looking at my hands. I don't notice anything. But I'm like, all right, I'll just trust that it worked. I come back to New York, and the timing was really unfortunate that 2 days, 3 days after I got back, my uncle passed away, my mom's brother.
Oh.
He was born as a healthy child. The challenge was the midwife that delivered him, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, and the delivery didn't go well. And he was like blue. My grandmother passed out, and the midwife freaked out, and all this stuff was happening. And he ended up developing cerebral palsy,
Mm.
Friedreich's ataxia, and his muscles were degenerating his entire life. They told my grandparents that he wouldn't live past 10. And the thing
Yeah.
was, they said he'd also never be able to learn. He lived to be 62, I believe, went to college, became an accountant. The only challenge was he was in a wheelchair, but he was fully functional and it was
Functional.
beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a Deepak Chopra quote: believe the diagnosis, but don't believe the prognosis. The diagnosis could be accurate. This is what the person is saying is currently going on in your body or in your mind. But the prognosis of, therefore, this is what's going to happen to you, that's based on statistics, that's based on their experience. But the thing is, any doctor, any healthcare practitioner who's been in practice long enough will see cases of a spontaneous remission. Somebody being told they've got 6 months to live, and then they're completely free of the problem, and it happened almost overnight. And
Yeah.
20 years later, they're still alive. And you go, what happened?
Mm.
And most doctors would say, we don't know. Why couldn't it happen for you? My uncle he had just passed away, and my grandmother, who'd been in her 80s, she's taken care of him for 62 years, and he was bedridden the last couple of years of his life. And I just remember she's staying with us for about a month after he passed away. And that first night, I just remembered learning that part of the Reiki training I did, which is a Japanese form of energy healing, that it can be useful for the mental and emotional side as well as the physical. And I remember saying, I call her abuelita, which is grandma in Spanish. And so I'm like, abuelita, I just got trained in this. I'd love to share it with you. I think it'll help. My mind was still really skeptical about this because I didn't feel it. I didn't see it. I had no real experience of it, but I was like, let's try it out. So she lays down on the couch and I start doing the work. And then we finish. And I'm like, how are you doing? And she just tells me how relaxed she feels. And she tells me that my hands were so warm and it felt like a sauna was coming out of them. And then her back pain that she had her whole life the next day was gone. And that
Mm.
was like those 3, 4 years ago, never came back. And then her grieving, we kept doing that every night for about a week. And the grieving I could just see was just so much simpler, easier, calmer. And then I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I started working with other people, and people started telling me, like, your hands, they're so hot. And then I learned in hindsight that's energy, but different people experience it differently. I felt like there was wind coming out of them, like ice, or other people, it feels like a pulsation or a vibration or whatever. So with her, it was in person. And then I had this beautiful life changing experience, which was a cousin of mine reached out to me from California. At the time, I'd only met him once. I might have met him as a child, but consciously aware
Right.
of it,
Yeah.
only met him once. He's my dad's cousin, and he was in his 60s at the time, I believe. And he's, could you help my brother? I never met his brother, and he didn't know about the energy stuff. He just knew about the physician side. And I said, I'm willing to speak to him. I'm not sure how much help I can be, like 3,000 miles away, but I can try. We get on a call, and it turns out he had a history of some really aggressive cancers, some of the worst cancers that there are. He was very fortunate that he went through different therapies and treatments, and he was okay. Those couple of years have gone by. Now all these symptoms were coming back. And I was hoping it wasn't the cancer that came back, and it wasn't. But what it turns out to be is, prior to that, actually, I say to the man, he's very religious, and I said, do you believe God brings people together for a reason? And he tells me, absolutely. And I said, I've gotten trained in something. Like you're working with 15 different healthcare practitioners. You're doing pretty much anything that I would recommend you to do, minus a few things. I said, Are you open to a different possibility? And he goes, yes. I said, I just got trained in something. It's going to sound very weird. Worst case scenario, nothing happens. Best case scenario, there's a miracle. Are you open to that? And he goes, I'll do anything. And I explained it. I told him energy work doesn't have to be in person. I can do it over Zoom. I could also do it just in my mind. I did it over Zoom. In my mind, I'm in the room with him. And there he is, laying on his back on his bed. He had back pain. In my mind, my hand's on his back, and I start pulling the pain out. On the Zoom video, he starts arching his back. And then he can't see me. My camera's off. And then he just says, I feel like, are you on my back right now? I feel like something touching me. And in my head, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Skepticism's still there. I was like, this is interesting. And then we finished. His back pain, his knee pain was significantly better. The next day, he calls me and tells me he just heard back from his neurologist and had these brain scans come back. It turned out he had multiple brain aneurysms and strokes that were significant and so
Oh,
severe. The doctors told him that nothing could be done. They gave him 6 weeks before he'd likely have a massive stroke, get his affairs in order because he probably wouldn't survive. So going back to the idea of the prognosis, nice to have because if it's likely, it's good to know. But imagine being told that, and I said, I'm going to do energy work for you every day going forward, and let's see what happens. And I did my energy work every day for him. Around 8 days later, I went on a walk and I called it my conversation with God. I basically said, I really want to believe this energy work is real. I really want to believe the people that I'm working with are experiencing the results that they're experiencing because of what we're doing. And my mind's just, what about this? What about that? They might be doing other things. Like, what's going on here? And I'm like, you got to show me something that's significant that I can't deny it. The next day, I get a video text message from this gentleman. He's laughing and crying at the same time. He's in the hospital. Brain's completely clear, no sign of anything. The doctors are saying, we have no idea what happened. It's a miracle because he didn't do anything else. And in that moment, there was like, okay, thank you for that.
you're
And
like you're like message received.
yeah, no, exactly. And there was still that got rid of 90% of the skepticism. And then I went to Hawaii and that intuition kicked back in and said it's time to, I wanted to go there my whole life. And there's a school that I go there for energy work. And my teacher has 121, he's 121st generation in his lineage, which is insane. Like that, it's Hawaii is the way I've learned it at least. Hawaii is the most remote place on the planet. And it was the last place to be westernized. So coming from that space, most teachings around the planet that were connected to the ancient ways
Yeah.
have been disconnected by 300 years, 500 years, 1,000 years or more. Whether it's like Native American stuff, whether it's Celtic stuff, like whatever it might be, there's people around the world, whether because of religious reasons or whatever the reason, just took out a lot of these teachings, burned them, killed people, whatever it was. And so in Hawaii, that never happened because by the time the missionaries came, it was like the mid 1800s, I think, and the Hawaiians basically their culture essentially got outlawed but they basically took it underground where they hid it in their chants, in their hula dances. It's almost like a Morse code of history. My teachers learned from people who were in the ancient ways. I went to this training and I told myself, what would it take for me to get rid of all the skepticism? I have to feel this with my own hands. 9 days went by and the training ended. I came back home and 2 days later, it just turned on so powerfully with my hands, my body as well, but predominantly my hands. I could feel people from far away. I could just find where the problem was. And it's like I could direct energy to somebody and they'd feel me if they had that sensitivity, let's say. And it could feel like pulsations, vibrations, heat. And it was amazing what started to happen. That would continue to progress and people's tumors started to shrink. Pain would go away. People would have emotional and mental blocks that they'd have their whole life. And it would just be gone in 20 or 40 minutes, depending on the length of the session. It used to take me 3 hours, 6 hours to do it. Now it's 20 to 45 minutes. And it was amazing. And this went to a commitment that I have that when something excites me, when something really makes me feel alive like this does, I go all into it.
Mhm.
And so this is something for me that feels like such a strong part of my path and my calling. The coaching stuff, I love that. The removing the blocks, I love that. Something about the energy work and the healing component and what that creates for people without making it sound scary. There's been aspects of this work that people have had, like one colleague of mine, he's a physician, and this gentleman told me, I stayed with him for a week when I went to a conference. And I remember going to this experience. This is when we just met. I went to Arizona, you and I met. The guy I stayed with, he tells me, a physician himself, and he says, if I start suffocating, don't be alarmed. Now, that's a weird thing to hear, right? and I,
Does
and
he
I
like
said,
does he have CPAP or does he have
I know
apnea or something?
about a month prior, 6 weeks or so, he got really sick. The sickness lasted for a while. He threw everything he knew at it. He threw drugs, IVs, herbs, botanicals, supplements,
Yeah.
acupuncture, everything he knew how to do. And he's a very brilliant physician. Nothing worked. And then finally, his body recovered enough that he was okay. He couldn't take a deep breath. Whenever he tried, his lungs would spasm and he would start coughing. He
Mm.
suffocated on multiple occasions where he suffocated for 2 minutes at one point and then maybe 60 seconds or so on the other one, just can't breathe.
Mm,
And he tells me this, and I just felt called to share. And I said, it's 10 p.m. I just got in on a Monday night. And I said to him, are you open to an energy session right now? And he goes, I would love that. So we do it. And it turns out there was this emotional block. He had something there that I needed to pull out and pulled it out. And right when we finished, I just said, take a deep breath. And he took a deep breath.
beautiful.
And it was the first time he's able to take a deep breath in 6 weeks with no cough. It was so beautiful to see that he had this look in his eyes. It was like his face looked so much lighter and younger and brighter. There was a lot of emotions expressed in this process because he had an emotional block as well. We cleared it. Chinese medicine style, the lungs are where grieving is. And so we released all that. And he was back to normal. He goes to bed. He wakes up the next morning. I see him before he goes to his clinic and I say, how are you feeling? And he's, I literally feel like back to normal. And then it was so cool that about 5 days later, before I left, his fiance made a comment and she goes, the last 6 weeks, you haven't been the same. And then once Jamil helped you with what he helped you with, I got you back. It was such a beautiful thing to hear because this work has been so fulfilling. That's the long story of getting involved in the energy work, just following intuition. And then I practice it every day. I live it. And so it's coming from the space of what can I read? What can I study? What teachers can I learn from? And what direct experiences can I cultivate for myself that not only build up the wisdom and the knowledge, but then how can I practice it so I actually have the felt experience of it? Because that for me was the only thing that could get rid of the doubt. I could hear from my teacher's incredible, and I can hear a million stories from him. Until I do it, there's still some degree of doubt that I was experiencing. Now that I've experienced it, and I've even seen it, like I've seen the aura around people, I've seen this giant green orb around somebody's hand. It's cool. With that in mind, it's no longer do I believe in it? No, if I had my phone in my hand and I let it go, do I believe it's going to go down or do I know it's going to go down? I
You know
know
it.
it's going to go down. So when I work with somebody and I know we're going to be doing some energy work and I know they're open to it, do I believe it's going to work or do I know it's going to work? I know
You
it's
know
going to
it's gonna
work.
work. Yeah.
And that
Beautiful.
can,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. And
And I,
and then
go ahead. I know your internet was cutting out just a few minutes ago, so I wanted to make sure I hear. Go ahead and finish what you were saying.
no, I'm complete.
Mm. First of all, thank you for that because
Mm,
you're like a hidden gem, a very rare
thank you.
hidden gem. And I've said this to you before. You need to be in the right places, in the right rooms for you to just poof, take off.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is the right place at the right time. I don't know. All I can say
Yeah.
is for all the viewers out there that really do believe in energy work, that believe in a lot of these modalities, for you to truly take Eastern medicine, Western medicine, right? And Eastern, Western, and you're basically combining it with
Mhm.
spiritual modalities.
Yeah.
When you have the East meets the West, and now the West is meeting the spiritual, and the spiritual is meeting the higher
Yeah.
power, it's like a magic sauce.
Yeah. And so it's like you have an Eastern and a Western toolkit and a paradigm. When I think of a paradigm, I think of a worldview. When somebody says that's impossible or that's not curable, I come from a space of from your paradigm. Given everything that I've read and learned and understood, this is what's possible. There's literally somebody in the world who's been cured of every condition that we've ever experienced. That doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean it's going to happen for you. It doesn't mean it's cheap or it'll look however it looks. But the point I'm saying is impossible is a place of coming from. If I say it's impossible, you can't be helped, then I shouldn't be the one trying to help you because I don't even believe it's going to work. But if I come from a space that there's four aspects to who we are, there's a physical component, an emotional component, a mental, and a spiritual energetic, depending on what word resonates with you. These four are just labels. You call them whatever you want. Different places around the world call them different things. Now, with that
Right.
in mind, think of it like this. I look at us as layers of an onion. You've got the physical, which is the grossest, it's the center. Outside of the physical, depending on the world, the culture, the background, it's either an etheric body, an astral body, a mental body, an emotional, spiritual, all these different bodies. That's one way of it's called a biofield from a science perspective. Historically, people called it an aura. Same thing. It's basically just your body is putting out information. There's machines we have that can detect the field that your heart emits, which looks the same as the magnetic field of the earth. And it's like this massive field that comes out. And when you get that quote unquote bad vibe from somebody, or you feel their energy and you go, I like being around this person, you're literally just feeling their heart field. You're feeling this energetic field that you can't see. But the thing is, some people can see
Mm-hmm.
it. And so, with that in mind, healing occurs from the outside in. When somebody has a significant trauma, that occurs in their mental, their emotional body. That mental, emotional body is a further layer out of that onion. So then it trickles down and informs the level below. In my
Mm-hmm.
paradigm, you've got this energetic or spiritual body, which I'm calling your real self, who you really are. That is whole, perfect, and complete. Think about this pure, like white light. It then shines through a mental body. And that mental body has distortions in it based on your beliefs and your limiting beliefs about yourself and the world and other people and what you're capable of and not capable of, etc. So that distorts the light. So now the light's an off white, it's whatever color it is. And then it goes through the emotional body. And then you've got these unexperienced experiences. You've got these suppressed emotions. We live in a culture, at least in the West, that we're told it's not okay to express a variety of things. For women, it's not okay to express anger. It's not okay to express your voice. For men, historically, it's not okay to show your tears or your sadness. It's not okay
Right.
to express emotion. And we define it. It's weakness, or it's this, or it's that. And all of these unexpressed emotions, they live in the body. I've personally experienced what I'm about to say, and any body worker, massage therapist, anyone here who's been in practice long enough has experienced some version of this. You're working on somebody and they've got a trigger point or a tight muscle, and you start working it out, and then the person starts crying or they start laughing, or a memory shows up that they haven't thought about in decades. They go, why am I crying right now? Because that emotion, when you didn't release it, got trapped in the fascia, which is like a saran wrap around the body under the skin, holding all the organs together. That emotion gets stuck there. In Chinese medicine, they would call that you have a blockage of qi, like your qi is not flowing optimally. And so it's all these different cultures had different ways of talking about the same thing. You have this emotional challenge, this mental challenge, it distorts that light even more. And then that light arrives in the physical. And then you have a body. Your cells are made from that information. So when somebody has a challenge and they say, I've tried everything and it's not working, like I'm not getting any better, are we getting to the root? What's actually happening
Right.
that caused the problem? And almost always, it's like saying, where is the distortion? And the distortion is almost always in the mental and the emotional body. There are physical challenges. You could live in an environment that's toxic. In that example, you could be the healthiest plant in the world, but if I put you in toxic soil, eventually your system will get sick and the plant won't do that well. The solution is to repot the thing. You got to get it in healthier soil. There's a physical component that sometimes gets ignored. But what gets ignored even more, I find, is the mental and the emotional side of things. And so when I do the coaching work, when I do the energy work, it's those blockages. What are those blockages that prevent you from seeing your own brilliance, to prevent you from recognizing, I can do this, to prevent you from recognizing, you know what, that anger, that resentment that I've been holding on to for potentially decades to that person who wronged me? How's that working out for me? How's that serving me? How's that helping me? Because I just feel pissed. That's actually suppressing your immune system. That's actually increasing the chance of cancer. Wouldn't it be way better to learn the lesson that you can take from that, set your boundaries and enforce them, and protect yourself now so you don't repeat the same old thing, but then let go of the stuckness, let go of the thing that's been holding you back all these years? That to me has been the unlock that I got a gentleman who just reached out to me 2 days ago. We're going to have a conversation on Thursday to see if we're going to work together. Successful businessman in real estate. And he says, I have a really bad temper. My wife and I have a great relationship. He tells me I've almost blew it 4 different times in the last 6 months, and I have to get this handled. And he goes, you think if we work together, you might be able to help me taper like that, or lower it a little bit? I told him, are you open to a better possibility? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, how about we get rid of it? And he goes, can we do that? I said, yeah, I have a couple questions for you. I knew the answer before I asked. I just wanted to confirm it. He's had this temper as long as he can remember. He used it in athletics to win. He used it in all
Right.
these different ways in life that it served him. So you've got, let's say, your results in the world. They're based on the actions you take or don't take. The actions you take or don't take are influenced by how you feel, but how you feel and think are influenced by your programming. And the programming is completely unconscious. Using a
Right.
computer metaphor, something's driving you. I can't have this MacBook laptop do something that it's not programmed to do. It won't work. The computer doesn't speak that language. I have to put in the new program for it to do the thing. Otherwise, it's going to keep repeating the old program. In that same way, if you catch yourself sabotaging, I keep making around the same amount of money and then I fall short. I keep not pursuing my dreams. I keep attracting the same kind of partner in relationship and I don't know why, because it's not serving me.
The same
Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah. Whenever
Yeah.
there's a pattern or a theme that we're running,
Yeah.
you've got a program that supports that. And if you don't have the results that you're wanting, you've got some faulty programming. That programming is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, given what it's for. But that program wasn't put in there by you. Nobody's born believing I'm not good enough and I don't matter. Nobody's
Right.
born fearing rejection. That's
No,
learned.
all that comes from
Yeah.
learned.
And then so it's what becomes possible if we can free ourselves from that. And at that point, you're just, I call it a phoenix rising. We burn away all the things that don't serve you, all the limiting beliefs, the identity, the stuck emotions, and then we build you back up as the truest version of you prior to all the things put on top of you. That's the big picture perspective on the energy work. There's so much science behind it because I wanted to speak both languages. I consider myself a bridge. How do I bridge
Yeah.
East and West? How do I bridge religion and spirituality? How do I bridge science and magic is what I call it. And I have a quote like I came up with years ago, which I love. Magic is science not yet understood. Because if it works, it's science. It either works or it doesn't. And if it works, you're just calling it magic because you don't understand it. So if I had my phone and we went back in time 2,000 years and I go to the king or queen and say, Your Majesty, here's this box. And with this box, you can communicate with somebody across the planet, and he's going, "What's a planet?" And then you can say, you can communicate to somebody in an instant, and then they'll say, "Where's the wire? Like, where's the connection?" And I go, "It's in the air." And they say, "I don't see it." And you go, "It's invisible." You probably get burned at the stake. And the thing is, what they would call magic or witchcraft is just science, and it's just how it works. It hasn't landed in the mainstream mindset yet. And
Correct.
so, with that in mind, there's so much that I did not know that's in my world now that 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and beyond, I thought was complete science fiction. And now that I've seen certain things with my own eyes, it's, oh, this is real. And that has made me so excited to just continue deepening the knowledge.
So, how do you tell people that may be feeling this? How do you tell people in just a couple of sentences to follow that intuition? Like, you obviously followed it. There was a calling, there was something that came in, and you were like, it is now. The time is now. Yes, I know you gave us examples, but for other people that are still unsure that they're having these psychic components to themselves, or sometimes they get these feelings and they go, I just don't understand this. What do you tell them?
Hmm. So I'm going to answer it the way that I'm understanding your question. And if I'm off, just please correct me. If someone said that exact line to me, I don't understand this. You're not supposed to. When you're
Hmm.
hired, I make a distinction between, and again, this is just for language purposes, it's all you, but creating a distinction just so the conscious mind can wrap its mind around it. You've got a conscious mind, which you identify as your name, whatever your personality, that for our listeners. You've got an unconscious mind, which is the storehouse of everything you've ever experienced up until this point. And that's where a lot of the emotional mental blockages are in the release work, the programming is. And then you've got a higher conscious mind or a higher self or a soul or whatever you want to call that. So I see it as all you, but just from a distinction to create a visual for this. Imagine these three versions of you. Your intuition is your higher self communicating to you, and you might call that a gut feeling. You might call that intuition. You might call that a
Right.
nudge. You call that whatever you call that. Most of the time, it doesn't make sense consciously. But the
Right.
thing is, I come from a space that something excites you, or something feels right to you, or something is continually showing up in your world for a reason. It
Right.
wouldn't be showing up to the degree that it is or excite you to the degree that it does if it wasn't meant for you. If I say, rhetorical question, Bina, what's your dream? And then you paint the picture for me. Some of our listeners would go, that's awesome. I'd love to do that. And some of them would go, that's nice. And it doesn't do it
Mhm.
for them because that dream is for you to create. It's for you to bring into the world. Now, the other person, they've got a dream that really excites them that might not do anything for you. And that's
Right.
beautiful because the world needs all the different things. With that in mind, I would come from a space of if something's coming up for you, what if you were to trust that it's coming up for a reason, especially if it's come up multiple times? Then what's the intensity with which it's coming up? Sometimes intuition, sometimes this is my experience of it, it always begins as a whisper. And then if you ignore
Hmm.
it, it gets louder. And
Oh, yeah.
eventually, if you ignore it long enough, it yells at you. And if you keep ignoring it, you get sick. And then you recover. And then if you keep ignoring it, your life usually gets pretty bad. And the thing is, that's the theme that I have seen for people. Where are you noticing the same message is coming up? How much longer are you going to do this for? This isn't right for you. You know, that thing you really want, you should go for that. How much longer do you need to hear that before you act on it? And what's the cost of not acting on it? Because assuming that in the way you've worded the question, they haven't been acting on it, what's that been costing you? For example, you're in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship that's not working and you tried everything, and you also know that it's not right for you anymore, but you stay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the cost of that? 6 months, 1 year, 5 years of doing that? I remember hearing a mentor of mine, he's a relationship coach, and he said to me, oftentimes the thing that ends a relationship, you could have spotted it and you probably did at the beginning. So you
Yes.
saw
Thank
something
you.
at the beginning and you discounted it or you ignored it or you told yourself, oh, it'll change or it's not a big deal or it's okay because you allowed the rest of the person's appearance, physical, emotional, mental, whatever it was, to blind you to it. But then fast forward and here's this thing that's ending the relationship that you saw in the beginning. And so in that same way, everyone who's listening, regardless of how you see yourself, you're smart. And there's different types of intelligence, of course. You're smart. When you recognize something's not working, then something needs to be done to change that. It either means leave, communicate differently, make a request differently, ask for help differently, or whatever it is. But when you've got this inner wisdom speaking to you and you ignore it, there's a story that I don't have time to give the full story here, but if I may just share the quick version of it.
Sure.
I was
We
not,
do
I
have a
was
couple of minutes
yeah,
left.
yeah, I was 19 years.
Yeah.
This is the story of why I do what I do. And I was in my sophomore year in college in the Bronx in New York City. And I remember being part of this pre-med group. And I was part of this group, and they said every year we have to fight to keep our funding, and we have to send a group of people to the capital, Albany, to basically share, this is my experience. It's really helpful. Please don't cut the funding. And they said, would you be one of the students? Excuse me. And I said, sure, I'll go. When do we leave? We leave Friday morning. We come back Sunday night. And I said, sounds good. This is Tuesday. Later that day, the intuition kicked in, whispering, something's not right. Don't go. And I ignored it. Wednesday, louder, something's not right. Don't go. Throughout the day, I was playing with it, but I ignored it. And then it got louder. Something's not right. It's yelling at me. Like, pay attention. Something's not right. Don't go. I thought I already told him I was going to be there. I need to go to this thing. But by the evening, it was so strong, and we're leaving tomorrow morning. It was so
Mm-hmm.
strong that I sent a message. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Something came up. I can't make it. So then Friday, they leave. Regular day. Saturday, regular day. At this point, I'm thinking following whatever that was didn't seem to do anything because I just missed out on that experience. Could have been helpful to them and maybe to me. And nothing happened this weekend. Sunday morning changed my whole life. Sunday morning, I woke up, and within minutes of waking up, my father had a brain aneurysm. Imagine you have a blood vessel in the brain, think of it like a tube, and it balloons out. If you're fortunate, you have one of the worst headaches of your life, you go to the hospital, and if they can take care of you, you hopefully get out of there and you're okay. My dad wasn't as fortunate. His aneurysm ruptured. So imagine that balloon popped, and he was in a 4-hour brain surgery. Prior to that, he was in a locked room, and I broke the door to get him out. And if I wasn't home, he would have died.
Mm.
That was the main intuition part of the story that I wanted to bring up. I'm in the hospital, and I just remember being told by these doctors it was the worst brain aneurysm the neurosurgeon ever saw. Chance of survival less than 5%. If he survived, to be in a coma and never wake up.
Mm.
And so now I'm feeling this immense sense of regret, feeling like I took my relationship with my dad for granted, feeling like I didn't really know him the way that I could. And because I'm being told he could die at any moment, that I blew it. I missed my opportunity. And he survived the 4-hour surgery. And I walk into the room, and it's the most vulnerable I've ever seen a human being look. And with that in mind, I just sat there being told he could die at any moment. I was very fortunate that he had 3 more years before he passed away. He was in a coma for about 2 to 3 months. He came out of it, and I took several years off after college to be one of his primary caregivers with my mom. I got to spend 10 to 15 hours a day with him. He needed somebody at all times. He was prone to seizures. He almost died in my arms a couple hundred times. He forgot who I was at times. He had memory issues. But with that in mind, in those 10 to 15 hours a day, he became one of my best friends. I had some of my highest highs and my lowest lows. I had moments where I realized here I am asking the question, when am I going to get my dad back? Because he's 30 to 60% of what he was before, cognitively, mentally, emotionally. And then I realized one day, what's that question doing? That question is preventing me from being with the man as he is right now in front of
Yes,
me.
right now.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's having me live in some make-believe possible future, but it's not now. And here I am in a way judging him without even using the words, just in my head. I'm judging him as being deficient as he is now. And our listeners there might be someone in your world right now that you're thinking about them from a potential perspective versus who they're actually being now. And what if you could love them as they are? And what if loving them as they are is actually the unlock to them potentially becoming that? With that in mind, I started to show up so fully every day because I recognized I tucked my dad in bed one night, and the thought crossed my mind, what if that was the last time I ever see my dad? What if he's not going to wake up tomorrow? And then I thought, that's true about my mom. It's true about my sister. It's true about everyone I've ever met, and it's true about me. And so I started living every day as if it was my last. There's a Steve Jobs quote that really landed for me where he said, every day I wake up, I look myself in the mirror and I ask, if today was my last day on this planet, would I want to do what I'm about to do? And if the answer is no, too many days in a row, I know something needs to change. And so there I was, recognizing a big spiritual awakening for me, recognizing the magic, the miracle of right now, the miracle of life, the miracle of we have today. And I stopped taking people and things for granted. And I started just seeing like just the magic in all of it, like literally experiencing. And I was, as you said at the beginning, I'm known for my hugs. And so one of my cousins gave me one of the best compliments I ever got. And she said, I love your hugs so much. Every time you hug me, I feel like you're never going to see me again. And the way it landed for me, that's what I was going for without putting words to it like that. And I had tears in my eyes. I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again because my dad was alive for 3 years before he passed. In 3 years, two of my cousins passed away. One was 20 and one was 21. They were both sudden. If you had asked either man when they were 18, tell me about your goals and your dreams and your vision for your life, I'm pretty
Right.
sure neither one would say, I'd be dead in less
I'm
than
gonna
2 years.
die. Yeah.
And so there's this Buddhist perspective that I've been exposed to at least, which is the problem is you think you have time. I'm hoping our listeners, you all have as much time as you want with your loved ones and in your own life. But my question to pose to every one of you to be with, how much time do I have left? And you all have the same answer. So then the question is, what are you doing with the time that you have? And is the way that you're spending your time and your energy and your money reflective of your priorities, your values, the standards that you want to live into? Or are you going to get to the end of your life with a lot of, I wish I would have? My dad passed away and he was a family practice physician. I remember being at his wake. Over 7,000 people came. I shook every single person's hand, and almost all of them said, "Your dad saved my life." I was so humbled by the impact. He was 52 when he passed, 49 with the aneurysm. Most of them hadn't seen him since he was 49 or younger. And I just remember having this aha moment that on the one hand, I was humbled by the impact that he made. And I was like, I wonder if I could ever do something like that. But then there was the secondary feeling of, I have been afraid of rejection. I have been dimming my shine and playing smaller than I'm capable of because I'm afraid of what people think about me. And as a
Mm,
result, and this goes back to that TED talk, I made this decision. It's easy when you're younger, and young is obviously relative, but it's easy when you're younger to see death as something that happens to quote unquote old people. But we all know people who've passed on from this physical existence sooner than we would have liked, whether they were children, whether they were teenagers, whatever the age. And so here's two of my cousins that passed away in those 3 years, and now I'm their age at that time. And I can't now say that it couldn't be today for me because it could be. So there was this moment of, I said earlier at the start of our call, the mask that we all wear to some degree or another. It's the persona. And it's who am I pretending to be? Who do I need to be for you to love me? And I decided to take the mask off and say, I'm going to be me to the fullest extent I know how to be. And as I know how to be me more, I'm going to be me more. All right, is everyone going to like that? No. But can I look myself in the mirror every day and say, I'm proud of you? Yeah. Can I look myself in the mirror every day and say,
mm.
if today was my last day in this world, do I want to do what I'm about to do? Yes. And with that in mind, I hope everyone can say the same. And if they can't, the beauty is you have an infinite number of second chances. So every moment that you say, I'm not satisfied in this specific way, you can do something about it, but you have to choose it. And it starts with you helping yourself and recognizing there's always hope. There's always another opportunity to change. And it starts with accepting yourself too. And
And I
yeah,
really
all
want
that
to
to be
end
said.
in that note. And I really
Yeah.
want to end on that note because I think that also answers for anybody that's out there with what can you do for yourself? But
Yeah.
also, if you have this calling and if you're having these different things, run with your intuition. There's always a reason for things that are occurring. And first of all, thank you for being here. Really, truly appreciate.
Yeah.
Thank you for your stories, for everything you've done. And for everyone that's listening, we'll put his information on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe below. We'll make sure his link is in the descriptions. And thank you again, Jamil. This fascinates me. And there might be a part two because there's so much more to explore here. I really believe that people have these sensations and gratitudes, and they're just confused in different levels. And really, to understand that there are people like Jamil out there that can help you balance it. There's people out there that can help you explore it more. There's people out there that is able to help you guide you through whatever it is that you're doing in life. So we'll make sure to have his information and his contact information below. Just please subscribe. And thank you guys till next time. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.